my goodness. All right. My head is starting to tingle already. Some people ask me, what does that mean when I say that this is resonance? This is almost like the feeling you get when you listen to really beautiful music and you get the spiritual chills, right? It's that. But when I feel that, and it's part of the oneness energy and my connection to source, and that alignment, it feels like it comes right down from the top of my head, like through the crown. And so I can feel that tingly sensation. And I'm also feeling quite a bit of this like butterfly energy in my belly that is making me have this energy and this smile. And it almost feels like a nervous excitement energy. It doesn't feel like anxiety or the pit of like the yucky feeling in your gut. It feels like the excitement butterfly energy. And this is coming with the message. The sensations, the feelings are part of the message that's being channeled. So this is why I'm sharing that. And this is connected to what I'm going to be talking about. And um, this energy that can come when we're entering these new phases of our life, and we've stripped down and are in active process of releasing things that no longer serve, that have been long standing patterns of survival skills that are really connected to limitations, limiting beliefs. And when we free ourselves from this, there's a nervous energy that comes in the belly, kind of with a lightness. And several of my morning clients have been on point, just theming with this. And I love it. I love it. It's amazing. And I just read last night to my kids this book called Just Because by Matthew McConaughey. And one of the lines that stood out to me was, just because you're shaky doesn't mean you're not steady. And this is what is coming through in connection to this energy and this revelation and the healing that myself and the people that I'm working with are finding themselves through. It's a beautiful thing. Just because you're shaky doesn't mean you're not steady. There is a sense of, this realization that I've had with several clients around what happens when we are lacking the fullness and spaciousness of self exploration, emotional safety that allows us to stay open hearted and curious as we navigate through these developmental milestones and, meander into the territory of secure attachment and a foundation of grounded, rooted safety and worthiness in an ideal way. How many of us do we experience that, right? Probably, I would say at this point in human evolution, probably a minority of people who have that type of journeying. And that's okay, because there's blessing in disguise and there's contrast here for a reason. And yes, so when you have some attachment wound energy, lack of emotional safety, complex PTSD, symptoms showing up, there's this realization that I experienced in session with somebody of secrecy was the only place that I felt safe. Secrecy was my safe place. And so we're addressing the massive transformation that's happening for this person as we are exiting this truth that's no longer true. we're setting that down, and we're arriving at the type of healing where our worthiness and this homecoming energy of achieving deeper levels of inner balance has been the key to unlock the door to the secrecy safe room that we've been limited to. And now we see an expansive world where when we step out of that door and across that threshold, this is the nervous butterfly energy that we're experiencing. Yes? There's a lightness, there's an excitement, and that call to use the key, take the lock off, open the door, and step through. When we heed it, it's a call to courage. And so it's going to come with both the invitation that brings a lightness and a deep breath at the notion of this possibility of a deeper, truer, sustainable relief rather than that temporary relief of the containment to the secrecy as a safe place that carries with it an indenturing to a more long-standing and chronic pervasive anxiety and paranoia, as inside of that chamber are all the shadows of our sense of unworthiness and this thing hanging over our head of I'm going to be found out, right? That this thing is haunting me. This thing is haunting me. And how much efforting am I having to put into trying to stay ahead of this storm because I don't feel safe enough, worthy enough, all of the things to be able to sit inside of this storm long enough to arrive at the blessings in disguise that are held in the eye of the storm, right? And so when we have that fluttery feeling in our belly of that shakiness, and this is the language that was used, was like, I did this, I showed up for myself in this beautiful way. I actively felt and saw this as a blessing in disguise as it was happening. And I noticed my ability to have a different level of tolerance for the discomfort that was still present as I walked with myself in a way that I have not felt safe enough and capable of doing in the past. And so was I shaky, yes. And this is where that line came right up to the forefront of my heart and my mind in this book that I read last night. Just because you're shaky doesn't mean you're not steady, right? Just because you feel the little stirring butterfly energy of transformation in your belly, that nervous excitement energy, is this the feeling that we feel in our body when we're experiencing the first step that requires courage? This is courage. This is courage embodied. Yes. And it's an important thing to distinguish and differentiate the energy and how it feels and where it feels inside of your body so that we don't confuse this feeling of courage and this RSVP yes to the pattern breaking and the transformation that is us showing up for ourselves in a way we have always deserved and just now arrived at readiness and recognition of the expansive array of options available to us so we can set down the ways in which we were confined to this limitation. And I think when we grow up with such an extreme lack of roots, security, stability, and things feel very conditional, and there's a lack of emotional safety, trauma, codependency, things just seeming to be ever shifting underneath your feet and lacking steady ground, it's very common inside of those places where we develop survival patterns of protection out of a lack of safety and a deep sense of unmet needs that we don't feel are going to get met. And so we adjust to that and make it make sense. And the make it make sense is the way the child's mind learns to adjust and adapt to that. Those places of what did we lean in harder to in order to somehow get through that and make that work. This is where we take sometimes our natural gifts and lean in so hard that we trip into a place where we have now overcompensated and self abandoned. And now we are imprisoned by these things that we have turned into survival skills. And when we gain the healing, we end up going through these phases where there is a healthy sense of recognition of self, soul essence, intrinsic worth, where we can detach from these survival skills and experience a more expansive array of options for us as we kind of chisel away at these bricks that have built up these walls of learned helplessness and these illusions of protection that are really just massive neon signs that say, I'm scared, so I'm going to play it small. And the only way I feel safe is inside of this chamber of secrecy. Yes? When we chisel away at that survival skill, oh, we get back, we get back the recognition of ourselves, and we don't lose the natural elements. It's like rehomed, it's integrated. It integrates back into this authenticity of, oh, it feels good to have that part of myself back because there's realness to it, there's truth to it. That's a superpower now, not a survival skill. It works with me, and I'm not working for it at this point. And so, part of what I wanted to say there is when you grow up lacking those spaces for a deep sense of learning who you are through emotional safety, unconditional love, exploration, the way in which ideally we would love for every child to be able to have. So they move through the places of natural development out of dependency that is biologically making sense when we are truly a dependent into, practicing differentiation and individuation and autonomy with knowing we're not losing love or connection. And then we arrive at secure attachment. Yes. When we don't have those things, it's very challenging to not enter a place of self dismissal, devaluing yourself, deprioritizing, and feeling like your sense of safety is connected to managing and taking ownership and being responsible for other people's emotional energy or behaviors, even when that means you don't have room for yours because theirs is taking up your entire field or capacity, right? So these are things that we're seeing breaking. And when that happens, how do you know what privacy feels like? Privacy from a place of individuation, differentiating, secure attachment, and self respect, where you don't need to explain or apologize or convince other people that you deserve this privacy or these boundaries, right? When you don't have that, I think privacy is something that is meant to be learned. It's meant to be learned. These boundaries, the delineating of where I start and where I end, what I'm responsible for and what you're responsible, how we experience unconditional love across a myriad of conditional mood states or situations or dynamics, and come back into this fluid nature and learn the pattern that's supposed to happen where there's rupture and repair, rupture and repair. We don't expect to stay in a constant state of flawless communication, understanding, and sense of alignment with the people we love at all times. And that becomes tolerable when there's emotional safety and we have faith that the repair on the other side of the rupture will happen pretty smoothly, pretty reliably, mm, pretty close in terms of time between the rupture and the repair. So we're not sitting in a place of we feel like we are shunned, shamed, having love, acceptance, positive regard withdrawn from us in the rupture, and the rupture is lasting 48 hours, right? This is attachment wound energy that will develop, that pulls you away from knowing that you are entitled to privacy, that you can feel safe inside of owning your own feelings and not having to set those down in order to hold the other person's ownership for the other person's emotional state, in order to pull back in the love and the acceptance that a child will feel like they need. And I say need because as an adult, that can feel, when we're in secure attachment, like a desire, right? I'd like to have this, but I have a wholeness and a secure attachment style where I don't need your attention. I don't need your acceptance. I am inside of this wholeness of my self acceptance and my love for self from a soul based, authentic, and unconditional nature, right? But as a child, that's not a desire. Your dependency and your sense of being able to learn how to feel about yourself and who you are, which is connected to social theory of mirror theory. I think that's what it's called. And so that's a need. That's a need. And so if the child's not getting it, they're going to set down themselves in order to try to have you, right? And so this is a process. And I've had a lot of women that have leaned toward that place. And that's not to say that is exclusive to a female. This is not exclusive to gender roles or sex in any way, right? I think when you are experiencing that dynamic and you're a very empathic individual, you're going to be susceptible to having that attachment wound show up for you in the way of having a difficulty with feeling and moving in an aligned way to your wholeness, where we are not overperforming, overreaching, or RSVPing yes when somebody offers us to take hold of their emotional responsibility and go like, sure, I'll take ownership of this for you. Right? And when you detach from that and your sense of safety is not coming from maintaining the conditions to stay in connection. I say connection because that's like attachment based energy if it's conditional in that nature. When we detach from that, we start to really understand what boundaries are in an embodied way, in an authentic way, in an aligned way that requires the depth of wholeness and worthiness to sit inside of, where a boundary can be communicated in a calm and loving manner where the boundary is not meant to push you away or disconnect you from me. It is actually, in some ways, the boundary is communication on here's what you can learn about me and how to reach me in a way that I'm going to be met and I'm going to be available for a depth of connection, because here I would be in attachment wound energy and reactivity. And when we try to communicate boundaries from that place, it can be more challenging to do. That can come across as a defensiveness that puts walls in between you and another person. But when you're in true, embodied, integrated wholeness and love for yourself, and so you can have a softened, compassionate energy where love is behind the communication of a boundary. When the person is able, person on the receiving end is able to be in a place to sit with that and receive it fully. And that's no obligation of yours, right? How somebody receives it is going to be, in many ways, their responsibility. And there's a range of ways in which people can receive and respond to our boundaries. But when we're at a place of a calm, integrated self-love energy, the boundary feels easier to say and more fluid. And it comes with a release of the need, the feeling of the need to know that the other person understands and validates the boundary. We no longer need the receiver to understand and agree with the boundary. We just need them to hear it and receive it, acknowledge it and honor it. And there's tolerance here for the other person, the receiving end, to completely not understand it. The understanding is not a requirement, right? It's not a requirement. Because again, this is about the discernment, the embodiment, and the truth being internal, being internal. The only person who is required to understand, believe in, and feel the resonance of alignment with the boundaries that we're setting from a place of wholeness is you. Is you. And so when the other person can realize themselves, sit in tolerance, release the need to understand and agree, and just witness and receive the boundary as your truth, not needing to understand it in order to know that it is your truth, there lies a beautiful opportunity for a deepening connection, because this is a pathway that says, hey, I'm trying to tell you, here's the best ways that I can be reached on a depth of this availability for genuine connection, right? This is how to love me well. This is how it feels to love me well. Yeah. And surely when you're in an aligned place and you're in that energy of love for self, and you're providing these gifts to people, that is, boundaries are a way of communicating, this is how I feel well loved. Can we pick that up? Can we set down defensiveness and pick that up and say, yes, thank you. It's a gift for me to know how you feel well loved, because the way we feel well loved is an individual experience. It's an individual experience. Oh, goodness. Ooh. Oh, these orbs already. I love it. I could feel it. That's why I was smiling, because I sometimes I can feel when it's happening, right? And it just gives me that really elevated energy of like giggly, lighthearted, like, whoop. It's lovely, lovely, lovely. It's a joy to experience. Okay, what do I want to add to this? I just feel so smiley. Woo. Okay, Spirit, help me out here. So I wanted to just add some more little thoughts here about the ways that I've seen a lot of people I've worked with, which has I specifically tend to be noticing that I'm working with a few like more women than men, although it's not exclusive by any means. I work with men as well, but I'm noticing this in more men than, or excuse me, I'm noticing this in more of the conversations I've had with some of the women I work with, and I feel like I'm just gonna say it. There's some elements to this that feel. Oh, I just saw like a beautiful orb that was. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. There's some elements here that feel to me like internalizing of some sexism, and this is like some ways that our own internal dialogue is minimizing and gaslighting ourselves into this like self-abandonment and obligation to discard our own truth and needs and desires, emotions, all the things, in order to carry the what we think other people want or need from us kind of things, or just like some self-dismissal. And so what some of these phrases are that can come up that I've really engaged the client in looking at this and take an inventory to see what about that phrase has actually been associated with encouragement for you to behave in a manner that is unkind to yourself, deprioritizing, and maybe right now not quite true to the energy and values that you believe in and want to embody. And some of those phrases are things such as hearing repeatedly, be the bigger person, take the higher road, be the bigger person, those type of things. And so, let's go with this one. I think they're kind of saying the same thing underneath both of those statements, but let's take the be the bigger person thing. Be the bigger person. What does this mean, right? When it's come up in my sessions with people, it feels like the context of it has been used repeatedly in a way that is minimizing this person's her or their experiences and encouraging them rather than advocating for themselves and speaking their truth and standing in the presence and the fullness of their truth and their experience and receiving the validation that it is an energy of step up above and outside of your experience that you're inside of right now, which is moving away from your truth and creates energy that later manifests in these people that I work with as a lot of relational patterns where they feel responsible for pleasing other people, even when that person has repeatedly been disrespectful to them. And the trickle down to the inside level of how this affects their relationship to self is a lot of indecision, a lot of guilt around contemplation of making decisions that would be self honoring, and feeling shame and guilt prone if they were to be making decisions that would be reflective of their truth, that would be selfish. And this is something we're working on bringing out and pulling back into, or not pulling back into, but discovering what it feels like to set down that statement of be the bigger person so we can feel safe, validated, and comfortable to sit in the presence of our own experiences without anything that feels like it inherently has some elements to the language that promote something that to me feels a little bit dehumanizing in all ways, right? Because if we're saying be the bigger person, what are we saying about that person? There's inherently some language that connects to superiority and inferiority. If you self-dismiss in this way, or you move in this way, or if you're upset or you're hurt, then somehow, if you are acknowledging that or sitting inside of it, or speaking to this person and setting firm boundaries around it, it is not the way I want my children to be raised. I don't want them to feel like they need to abandon the truth and set down their hurt to be the bigger person in order to move forward. And there's like pulling into the humanity on all levels. There's another phrase, there's another experience or phenomenon that I've noticed as well, which is about second chances. And when somebody has hurt you, and it's very obvious, let's talk about like a big time sense of betrayal. And then this person is apologizing and asking for forgiveness in a manner that is putting the apology is delivered in such a way that you then feel obligated or responsible for providing them with absolution or forgiveness. And this, I think, when we notice that if somebody really hurts me and then they are apologizing, and I am noticing that I'm feeling guilty for being hurt, or I'm feeling like I owe it to them to give a second chance, we may need to sit and look at that. I think that comes from a wounded energy. When you are the one who has been hurt and you're receiving an apology that feels like it's placing a request for the forgiveness to come with access, that's not the type of apology that you deserve. And when you feel an inner sense of obligation, this can be a sign that we have some unhealed energy, and we may have experienced some patterned situations and some attachment wound energy that is contributing to that sense of owing somebody a second chance.